Right, so today I thought I'd do something a little bit different. As you know, the list has filled up quite a lot anyway, so I'm currently working through them. And what I thought I'd do was I thought I'd show you how I actually make all the caws that I make, how I actually go about it. And hopefully it'll be helpful to people who, want to make their own creations and things. They can watch how I do it, and maybe it'll help you out with your own. So the one I'm going to be making today is Zelina Vega. So what I thought I'd do is, I'll basically just show you how I do it while I actually create it. So, the first thing we're going to start out with is the things you need to find to make a good one. Well, I'll make a respectable one. I want to be clear, I don't want anyone to think I'm saying like I'm the best at this and I'm an expert, but I think it's fair to say I probably know more than most. But no, there's definitely better creators than me. I want to put that out there. I don't think I'm the best or anything, but I think I can do an okay job, and hopefully, if I sort of show you how I do it, then you might even be able to do it a lot better than I can. So the first steps you're going to need, for me especially, because a lot of the requests I get, I don't really watch the modern stuff, and I haven't watched for a lot of years. So a lot of times, I won't even know who any of these people are, so you're going to need a Wikipedia page, and that's just going to give you the person's height, hometown, and weight. But the main thing you're going to need is good pictures, and I'm going to show you what you need to find when you're looking at pictures. So for Zelina Vega, I'm going to need, usually it's 3 pictures I need. The first one is a good picture from the front, just for the face. Now, there's not many bad examples on here, but what you don't want is things like this, where somebody's smiling, or somebody's, frowning or pulling a face. You literally want somebody with as much of a blank expression as you can find. Like this, she's smiling, she's sort of putting a bit of a face on there. So I'm looking for a front shot where it's pretty much expressionless, and they're not looking up or down, the camera's not sort of down on the face so it looks like they're sort of leaning down to frown or looking up. You want it you basically want the lens of the camera, when the picture's been took, to be sort of level with the face, which this one's probably the best one I could find before. You can see that one there. There's not really, she's pulling a slight thing with her mouth there, but her eyes are pretty much relaxed and everything. You want it as plain as you can get it. So that's the main picture you're going to need to do the face. The other thing you're going to need is a side profile shot. So basically a picture from the side of the face. So I usually just type in the name and then side profile. And this is the one I picked. I've actually picked some of these earlier, but this is the one I picked here. In fact, I've got it there. So something where it's as far to the side as you can get. So if I show you actually the head, I've not changed the gender on this yet, so I'm not doing her as a bloke. But so when you look at the side, you can see how far the eyes stick out, the nose, the mouth, the jaw, everything like that. So that's a pretty good shot. And the third thing you're going to need, which I was quite lucky with mine because I found it when I typed in side profile earlier, and there it is. You're going to need a full body shot. Now this is quite a good one because it gives it me from the side and from the front. So if you're going to make, that's actually pretty good for the face as well, that one. But she is sort of looking down a little bit, tilting her head forward. But yeah, you don't have to be as really a perfectionist on it, but basically you don't want someone to be pulling a face while they're doing it. That's the main aim of the game. So we've got a front shot now, we've got a side shot, and we've got a body shot. So these are the 3 things that we're going to need to make a start. Obviously, with it being a woman, I'm going to change the gender to female. I'm sure I don't need to help you with that. And you can input the details. They're all on you can see them on the Wikipedia. Now, if anybody's below 5'3", you can't go any lower than that. So you just make them as small as you can. But I always start out with the face. And the first thing I start out with is the actual features first. So I'm going to do the hair first. Now, obviously she's got 2 hair colours. You're not going to be able to recreate that in the game. So you're just going to look for a hairstyle as similar to this as you can find, which, again, this is a 20-year-old game and there's only so many hairstyles, so you just do your best. But me looking at it from here, I'm going to try and find the closest one I can get, and I'm probably going to do the colour this sort of whitish colour here, because I've seen other pictures when I googled her where she has got that hair colour on its own, so I think that's probably the best you're going to get. So I may skip some parts of this because I don't know how useful it's going to be. The main thing you're looking at is how much of the head the hair covers as well. Because again, you're not going to find a perfect match. That's just reality. I mean, looking at that is pretty close when I look at the head and I look at that. So I'm going to go for that one. The length obviously needs to go longer. You can always tweak these after. But you just want to get these in place before you start changing the shape of the face. She's a little bit more blonde than that, I'd say. Maybe there. No, that looks pretty good, actually. And just play about with it. So obviously your colour, there's your colour. Now because she's got quite white hair, that doesn't matter as much. This is picking your colour. The shade obviously makes the colour stronger. The more you pull that away, it becomes white or black depending on the brightness. There's your brightness. So she's got obviously quite bright hair there. And I've made it as long as it can be. Now the eyes, with the eyes there's about 4 you can pick. And what you're looking at with the eyes is how much, so where their eye colour is, what do you call that part of the eye? Not the whites of the eye, the other bit, if that makes sense. You're looking at how big that is. So I can see with hers there's not much white to her eye, it's mainly the middle bit, so you're looking for the largest one. Now usually the largest one is either 8, it's not 8, because they change round, so it's 9 for female, I think it's 17 is the smallest one. Like that. And this green one here is usually the largest, so I don't think it's quite that large. I'll probably go for this one. And this isn't the best picture, so let's see if I can find another picture. You will sometimes go, that detail isn't quite clear in the picture, I need a better. But her eyes look very dark, they're dark coloured, you can see there, so let's go back to that. So if they're very dark like that, you're just going to make them. I'd probably say that looks pretty good. Eyebrows. The thing with eyebrows is you're going to look at the distance here between the space between them, because that's something that you can't modify. If you look at eyebrows and think they don't look thick enough, you can adjust the thickness later. So the main thing you're looking at is the shape of the eyebrows and the distance between there. And to be honest, that one I'm looking at now, they've got the shape. It might be a little bit too thin then, because there is a limit to how much you can change the thickness, but it can be done. I'd probably say they look pretty good, so let's go for them. And I'd say there's a bit more transparency because she's got that sort of, I don't think they painted on, but you get what I mean, thin brows where they sort of paint over them. So I'm going to go a little bit darker than that. Again, this is something where you'll just play about with it and you'll just get better with it. But I'd say for now that looks okay. Lips is another one, you can change the thickness. You're just looking for a good colour match. Sometimes you might flick through and say, actually, certain ones look better, but to be honest with you, it's not going to be the end of the world. Majority of the time I stick with one and just change the colours and the thickness. So she's got sort of a dark red. So I'm going to go here. I'm probably saying, again, if something looks sort of too solid like that, you can always just make it a little bit more transparent. I'd say that's quite a good colour. Face skin I always leave till last, because that's kind of once you've shaped everything, it's kind of like the finishing texture. And I think that's a lot better to do once you've done everything else, so I usually leave this out till last. And obviously eyelids is just eyelashes, so she's got quite long ones. But this isn't something that's really essential. And obviously you're just going to make these as dark as it'll go. Yeah. So now we've done the basics of this, now we can go on to actually changing the shape. Now the first thing I'm going to do is go to body, because I want to change her head, because her head there looks far too wide and not tall enough. So I'm going to go there. And I'd probably say that's more like what she looks like, maybe a little bit wider. Yeah. So I always do that first, and the reason is because you can't change the head shape from here. You can change the shape of the forehead and the jaw and everything else, but to get that head shape is probably the most important thing because it makes the rest of everything easier. And then all you do, when you go in for the morphing, it's just step by step. So the head, if you don't know, that basically just changes the size of the head. Sometimes a little bit of a balancing act, because if you go really high, it actually makes the hair bigger as well. But for this one, it looks pretty good. I'd say just a tiny bit off. If you do it size first, you can always change the width. Now, I'm actually not looking at the hair for this bit. I'm looking at where a head is, and you can see a head is not perfectly sort of, square. There's sort of an angle here, so I'd say the width probably needs to be a little bit smaller. So I'll bring that in a little bit. Again, you see the hair looks a bit smaller, but there's not a lot you can do about that. And I'm going to bring the height down a bit as well. And I'd say that looks okay. Eyebrows, you're going to get the position with this. And again, I know you're probably looking and thinking the eyes aren't in the right place, but we're going to move them in a minute. So I'm just looking at the gap between where a hairline is and where her eyebrows are. And I'd probably say that's pretty good. Angle, as you can see, that changes them like that. But the default one was pretty close to where hers are anyway, so it's only a very subtle change. Again, I said you could change the thickness. If they're too thin, you can thicken them up, but they look pretty perfect, those. I might change them a little bit, but there's nothing drastic on this one. And depth comes later. This is from the side shot. So anything that's depth, where it tells you how much something sticks out, we're going to do this separately when we do the side profile. Then we move on to eyes. Probably the most important thing with eyes is actually this. So this is what moves the eyes up and down the y-axis. And this is probably the most important part, because I think if you get the eyes really well, then everything else can not look as good, and it looks like a good creation. I think if you get everything else right and get the eyes wrong, it can sort of ruin it. I think these are the most important bit. In a way, you're just looking at glancing over to the picture, glancing over to this, and adjusting the height to where you think it looks like they're in the right place. The nose is a good indicator as well, because you can see the centre of the eyes and where the nose is. So you can see on here, you can see the middle. And I'd say they probably need to be a little bit higher than that. So I'd probably say about there. Angle is the tilt of the eyes. So you're looking... I could have picked a better picture for this, really. But you're looking at both corners of the eyes. You see the top of the eye here, as in the eye cursor thing that I'm showing you. The top of the eye and the top of the eye. So you notice on hers, this end is a little bit higher up than that end. So we're just going to make that adjustment until it looks about right. And I'd say that was probably the right angle for that. I'll probably move them down a little bit, actually. Not only a subtle amount. But again, a lot of this, once you start doing it, you'll look and you'll sort of realise straight away, oh, it's slightly out, that. Height and width is literally just the size of the eyes. So, I mean, they're pretty good. I'd say maybe a little bit, tiny bit smaller, but nothing drastic. And can't speak now. X-axis position is basically the width of the eyes, how far apart they are or how close together they are. And a good indicator of that is, again, looking at the gap here. So I'd say her eyes are a little bit further apart, but not a mile apart, so I'd say about there. I'll try and keep this entertaining and informative, but yeah, I'm doing this anyway, so I thought it might be useful to just stick a microphone in front of myself, and it still might be of use. If you're using size, if someone's eyes look absolutely tiny when you've adjusted these, or they look absolutely too big, you can just make them big like that, but you don't really want to use that unless it's a drastic change you need to make. If you're just making subtle changes, just stick to the height and the width. But I think the eyes look okay there. Obviously, makeup and things will change things, but that's something I'm going to do later. Now we come to nose, and now nose is the only bit where I'd say you need a side profile shot first, because you have to do the angle of the nose. Now this is how much the nose tilts. If you get that wrong and then have to adjust it later, it can affect the appearance from the front. So this is the only bit where I'd say look at the side shot while you do it, even the first time. So obviously height of the nose, you can see that makes the nose longer and shorter down the face. I'm probably going to put that about there. I think I've got the angle pretty right, so her nose does point downwards like that. I'd say that's quite good. But we're not going to get tied into that too much. We're going to do the side shot separately, but it's mainly that bit that you need to get right first. Then we'll come back to this. So obviously the height, sometimes you might look at the side, look at the front, and might decide that you need to make some slight changes, but you want to get the height right, and I'd say from the front that looks pretty good. Don't worry about the position of the mouth, you're just looking at this on the face, because we're going to move the mouth around as well later, and the jaw as well. So we've got nostril height. Now you see here, the nostrils look quite tall. So what that does is it sort of thins them out, because they're not as thick as they were there. So I'd probably say roughly there. And I know these instructions might not be the clearest in the world, but initially all you're doing is just doing this step by step, piece by piece in a way. And that's the most important thing, is just look at each detail, look at the eyebrows, look at the eyes, look at the nose, and just make the changes gradually, because you can't do it in one go. You've got to do each part as sort of a separate entity. Now you've got two settings here that are quite useful. You've got width. Now width will make the entire nose wider, including the top bit. So what I normally do is I look at this top part of the nose and I adjust the width accordingly. And then you might get somebody where the nostril width is different to the top width. So adjust the top part of the nose using the width, and I'd say that looks pretty good. And then the second part, you're going to use the nostril width, and this will affect the width of the lower part of the nose where the nostrils are. So I'm probably going to say about there. And again, now I've done that, I think the height might need to be a little bit more. Again, imagine that anything below the nose is covered up. Ignore this part. You're just looking at the top part here as you work your way down. But I'm fairly happy with that for now. Cheeks is a little bit more complex, but luckily she's got quite sticky out cheeks. So, when you go to y-axis, I'm trying to remember. I don't know if you can see that because it's a very subtle thing, but you can see how if you move this to minus, the cheekbones move upwards. And if you move it down, they move it up. I'm explaining this very clearly. Let me do that again. So if you move the digit down into the minuses, you'll notice the very subtle movement of the cheekbones. So if you move the number up, the cheekbones come down. If you move the number down, the cheekbones go up. You'll probably be able to see this a lot better on your own TV or your own computer. You're just looking at where the sort of point is on her cheeks, if that makes any sense. And her cheekbones are quite low down. She's not got high cheekbones, so I'd say quite a high number. X-axis width is almost like the width of the cheeks. It sort of brings them outwards. So if you put that digit up, it gives a sort of chubbier cheeks. You can't really see it really clearly on here, but you'll see them move inwards and outwards. And hers are quite outwards. So I'm gonna put this to 100. The cheeks probably isn't the most important measurement. The only thing you need to get right with the cheeks is probably the size. And again, I'd probably go about there. You're looking at the difference between the shape of the face and how much the cheeks stand out. But because her hair's there, it's not as important, really. I'm going to make them a little bit smaller. But probably not too important with this one. We'll move on to mouth now. First thing you're going to want to do with mouth is the thickness. Now, looking at the thickness of that and the thickness of her lips, they're not that thick. So I'm going to bring that down. And that looks more or less right. The other thing that's important is angle. Now it's almost like a smile. The shape of the mouth, whether it's smiling or sad. Now most people when they rest, they'll have a certain position that the mouth is in. As you can see here, she's doing sort of a half pulled face. So I'm looking at this side. And I'd say it points downwards just ever so slightly. It's not drastic. So I'm probably just going to put it about there. And the third thing you're going to want to do is the width. Now, I just usually measure this by the nose because I've just done it. So it's basically just see how much more does it stick out than the nose. And that's quite a good measurement. So I actually say it needs to come in a little bit. Another thing you can look at as well is how level it is with the eyes as well. So if I look there, it's sort of meeting there, isn't it? So maybe a touch wider. Maybe probably about there, yeah. And the final thing you're going to want to do is the height. So the height will dictate the space between the nose and where the mouth starts. And to be honest, more or less for this one, it's pretty much the same. So I don't need to change that. Jaw is probably the final important part of the face. And I'll show you what all of these do. So outline, I'll move this part of the jaw outwards. Like this. You generally don't do that with women unless it's China. Upper line will change this part and it will move it inwards and outwards. So if you go minus, it gives them that more shaped jaw. But normally for women tend to have more of an upper line. And there's the width and the height as well. So the width is for this part of the jaw. So sometimes you might have somebody that's got quite a shaped jaw like that, but they still have a wide jaw, so you may need to widen it like this to give it that more rounded look, because she's got quite a rounded jaw. We're going to move this back out. And again, I'm just looking at the shape. It goes inwards here, so our upper line is going to come in. That's far too wide what I've done there. Upper line needs to come out, I'd say. Just to give it that more rounded look. But the problem with this is, though, if you go too far, they end up looking a bit ridiculous. So, as best you can do, really, I'd probably say about there. And then I'd bring it up, because obviously, she's not got a massive jaw, has she? So you're just looking to bring the chin pretty much level in this case, because she's got quite a sort of flat, that's a straight line there, and then you've got sort of a rounded edge. And the thickness is basically how saggy the chin is underneath. She doesn't have a double chin, so we move that. Maybe a little bit more high. Again, I can't tell you exactly how to do it. A lot of these things are going to be use your own judgment, but if I kind of show you, it might be a little bit of help to sort of understanding how to figure these things out. But yeah, like a lot of these things, it's not a one-size-fits-all. You'll play around with it, and you'll get it so it looks right eventually. Because sometimes you'll do it and go, actually, that needs changing, that needs to move. But yeah, I think that looks okay. It doesn't really matter as much because you can't really see her ears. If you can't really see them, what I normally do is I just bring this in. So this just puts the ears in and out if someone's got like bat ears. But because you can't really see them, and you can on this, I'm just going to put them in as far as I can. I'm going to make them small. And age is probably something, again, I'd leave to last. So we're going to move to the side profile shot now. I'm not sure how helpful this is to everyone. And again, there's some things that need to change here, but we're going to start with head. And head is the shape of the forehead. Now, it's quite hard to see with the hair in the way. But I'll show you what happens. So if you put it out all the way, it makes the top of the head stick out more. So you're just going to want to... You're looking at the line here, and as it's pretty much straight, it goes in slightly. There's a slight line sort of that way, if you know what I mean. But it's a subtle thing, so I'd probably say about there. Eyebrows is just a depth thing again. I normally don't mess about with that too much. Eyes is... So if you look at where her eyes are here, this is why you need a good side profile shot. You can see they're not that far away from her eyebrow, so her eyes stick out quite a much. Now, some people have eyes that are quite far in the head, and you'll notice when you look from the side, you can see the edge of her eyelid there. You'll notice it'll be further back in the head, so hers are quite protruding, if that makes any sense. It's not that much of a crazy change when you do this, so I usually just either put it on 100 or minus 100. But yeah, her eyes stick out quite a lot, so we'll do that. Nose is probably the only complicated part of this because you've got to do more than one measurement. So the thing you need to look at here first is probably the arc. Now this is the bit between the eyebrows and where the nose starts. So it's sort of like that curve in the middle. For the most part, you won't really have to move this, but in her case, I'd say there's a little bit of a curvature there. It sticks in a little bit. So I'm just going to bring that in ever so slightly, like that. And you can see there's just a slight curve like she's got there. The other thing with nose is obviously we've done the angle. You may need to tweak it slightly. But more or less, you should have got that right. Length is the main one because... But I think we have that more or less spot on. It wasn't too bad. The height might be slightly out. Again, you're always going to be sort of battling between the side shot and the front shot with that sometimes. So if it doesn't look too bad from the side, I'd just keep it the same. And obviously, I think that's everything, yeah. I've missed one thing out with nose. Size is very similar to the eyes. If you can change it without messing about with that, don't touch it. But if you get someone that has a ridiculously big or small nose, then you might need to put this up a bit, just so you can get the size. But most of the time, you won't really touch that. Cheeks is just depth again, and as you can see, you want to see where the end of the cheekbones is, and I'd say they protrude out past their eyes, so you're going to want to put this on quite a high depth, and as you can see, it's a subtle change, it's not a huge one. Mouth is how much the mouth sticks out, and as you can see here, when you look at a nose, a mouth does protrude quite far, so we're going to put the depth on that. And I'd probably say about there. Again, you're just looking at the where that starts, and I'd say that's more or less, maybe a little bit less. And the same with the jaw. There's two differences with the jaw, though. Obviously, how much it sticks out. Now, as you can see, a mouth's there, a jaw's there. This sticks out probably just short of where the mouth is, but it sticks out a little bit. And the final bit is the thickness, so you can actually see it better because you can see the actual line. This sort of I see everything in lines when I do this. So if you notice you put it thick, it's sort of the line moves like that. Some people's are level, some people's are going. Hers is actually quite deep in, so you want to put that on sort of a minus like that. My neck needs sticking in, but that's for something else. So after doing that, I'm going to show you the ears, which you can't actually see. What it'll do is, if you change this angle, it actually changes which way the ears tilt. So obviously I can't see, but if I move that down, what happens is the top of the ears sort of tilt this way, backwards. And the same if you do it the other way, they tilt forwards, but obviously because she's got long hair, it doesn't matter. So more or less, that's the face morphing done. But there's just a couple of details. We're going to do body skin. Usually for the female wrestlers, I just use the default one because they're not as... I mean, you're never going to use that really, are you? Or that. You might use that one. In fact, that might be the one for her, but... Yeah, there's not as many as with the men. I tend to most of the time use one, but for Zelina Vega I might use 4. And again, you're just looking to match the skin again, you know, so she's got, I'd say probably move it a little bit more towards yellow. Put the colour up. Don't sort of exaggerate it too much because when they're actually in a match, you want the colour to be more subtle. So even though you might be looking and saying, I want a perfect colour match, kind of hold back a little bit or they look a bit ridiculous if you make them too tan. Because I made a Ric Flair and it looked like a lobster. And I mean even more than he does in real life, so... Yeah, so you just sort of put it as close as you can without looking ridiculous. My general rule is, if you're at the default setting there, probably 8 or 10 is the limit if you're creating someone's skin. So what I mean by that is, if you count how far away they are from 50 on both of them, I never want to be more than 8 or 10 digits away from both of them being 50. So that's probably as far as I'm going to go. But I'm probably going to make it a little bit more subtle. I'll probably go there. And now we've done the body skin. We'll go to face skin. Now what face skin is, it's basically the texture of the face, and you'll see that sort of lines appear. Once you've done everything, there's not necessarily a skill to this. You're just going to flick through them and say, pick which one looks the best, or makes it most resemble the person. So you're probably going to go back to this. And to be honest with you, I think that one looks pretty good. There's no necessarily right or wrong answer with this. It's just flick through and see what you think looks the best. But personally, I think that one looked the best. Don't worry about the eyes, because you can change the markings around the eyes with makeup. It's mainly the face, and I'd say that's probably the best one. And that's pretty much it as far as I can. Was there anything else I didn't do? I don't think there was. That's everything. But yeah, as much as I've explained it in probably the most confusing way in the world, that's how I do face morphing when I do my created wrestlers. And again, you can always go back, you know, if you because I'm looking at that now, I'm thinking maybe the head needs to be slightly longer. Maybe bring it in a little bit. These are subtle changes, but more or less, I've just shown you how I do it. So I hope this was helpful to somebody out there. If you enjoyed watching it anyway, at least you got that out of it. But let me know if you want to see more videos like this where I sort of just show you what I do. Because it'd be quite good if I could sort of, you know, impart a bit onto other people. Because I want to see you get better than me at creating this stuff. Because, in all honesty, I know I'm not the best at this. I know there's people out there that could probably do better. Yeah, so hopefully you've found this helpful and it's give you a little bit of guidance. And you might start creating some yourself using similar methods. But yeah, that's about it for today. Let me know if you want to see a body morphing, you know, to do with the attires and obviously doing makeup, and there's different things you can do with the face, adding shading and things like that. So yeah, let me know what you thought of it. And apart from that, I'll see you again at some point. Do you want some great created wrestlers in your game, but without going through the lengthy process of creating them yourself? Well, I can help you out with that. If you play on PS2 or PS2 emulator, I can create just for you a custom save data file and preload it with up to 30 created wrestlers that you have chosen. If you're interested, send me an email at pastgengamingemail@gmail.com. My email is linked on the main channel page, and I can also do this for the PSP, but on PSP I can only do save files for the European version of the game.